Great. Well, we are going to get started. Thank you, everybody, so much for joining. We're very happy to have you here. My name is Kara. I'll be kicking us off. You are at the Global Fishing Watch informational webinar for the Open Ocean Research Grant Program. And we're very happy that you were able to join. We're looking forward to introducing you to some of the team members at Global Fishing Watch that will be key in helping implement this program. So with no further ado, we will move on. And I'll hand it over to David.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for joining. It's great to see all these comments in the chat. I'm David Kreutzma. I'm the Chief Scientist at Global Fishing Watch. When I joined about 10 years ago, we were under 10 people, and now we are over 120 in over 24 countries around the globe. Truly a global organization. And it has been really exciting to be a part of this organization, to grow, and now hopefully to have a bunch of you join in our work. We also, so we're an international nonprofit that uses satellite technology, machine learning, and data visualizations to build an accurate picture of human activity at sea through free and open data and tools. Our focus has historically been fishing, as our name implies, but as I'll talk later, we're producing these data sets that can be applied to almost any human activity in the ocean. Within Global Fishing Watch, we have a research arm, which is what I lead and which members of the team here are part of. We also have a team which helps run our engineering and product and produces the website that you see, and a team that engages with countries around the globe to help encourage transparency and apply that transparency to better manage the ocean. We're focused here on the research, on helping kind of develop that core technology and then applying it to better understanding of human activity in the ocean. And I'll talk more about data sets later. Kara, Andre, is there anything else we should touch on? Great. I'll hand it back to you and I'll say more about our data in a little bit.
Thanks, David, for this introduction. I will introduce myself, and then the rest of the team who is in the call can introduce themselves. My name is Andrea Sanchez Tapia. I am a data scientist on the team since 2023. I am also the research network coordinator, and I am super excited to have you all here because we have been talking about this program for a long time. We are trying to expand our research network to have a reach around the globe. So thanks for your time and for accommodating the time zones to join this webinar. Up to you, Rocio.
Hi, everybody. My name is Rocio. I was born in Peru, but now I am based in Mexico. And I am a senior data scientist at the research and innovation team with Andrea and Tyler and David here. And I lead on the behavioral models that we develop here at Global Fishing Watch. Very nice to see you all.
I can go next. I'm Tyler. I'm a senior data scientist on our research team as well. I've been at Global Fishing Watch since 2019. Before that, I was working at UC Santa Barbara, and my background is in marine science and management. And like Rocio, I work closely on our team around our core vessel tracking and behavior data sets, so fishing effort, events, things like that. I've also worked closely with David and Andrea on our research partnerships and ensuring that researchers and other users have access to the best data that they can. And I am based in Vermont in the US.
Hello, I'm Lisa. I'm also based in the US. I'm in Maryland on the Atlantic coast. And I'm a communications manager here at Global Fishing Watch. I provide support to the research and innovations team, helping tell the stories about all the really cool and innovative work that's being done. And I'll pass it back to Kara.
Thanks all, and aloha everyone. I'm Kara Miller. I'm based in the beautiful islands of Hawaii. My career is in international fisheries management and policy and program and grant management, specializing specifically within the Pacific Islands region. And in terms of my work for Global Fishing Watch, I'm your grant program manager. So before we dive into some specifics around the Open Ocean Research Grant Program, I did want to note that the chat is open for you to make comments at any point. If you have project-specific questions, please direct those to the chat. We will have about 20 minutes, ideally, at the end of our team presentation for you to come on and ask questions to the team for them to address right now in real time at the end, but please keep those questions more general, specific to the notice of funding opportunity, any questions around the application process itself, budget, general types of questions. If it's a project specific question, please put that in the chat, and some members of the research and innovation team that are here on the call can try their best to answer you in the chat. All right, so as you have probably read, the overall goal of this program is essentially to enhance this ocean governance and fisheries management goal of Global Fishing Watch by publicly sharing data on human activity at sea via these Global Fishing Watch data sets that you will be utilizing in your projects. Another key goal of this program is around the Global Fishing Watch network of partners. So growing this community of practice of people that are utilizing their data and contributing to these goals. Expanding, improving the data sets, that would be a more specific example of some of the uses and applications. And ultimately, through this program, the goal is to invite researchers from all over the world to contribute to these goals, to this larger mission, and ultimately to improving ocean governance. For eligibility, there are two main categories: individuals, and if you're applying in the individual category, the max award amount is 10,000 USD. And then there's a group category, a small group category, essentially 2 to 5 people. And within both of these categories, examples of who you might be. Absolutely, I had a lot of questions about, am I eligible as a master's or PhD student? Yes, absolutely. Early career researchers falls into that same type of category. And all of the other entities and classifications listed here: civil society, nonprofit, academic institutions, government agencies, all of these are eligible. So the overall structure, it's been launched. That's why we're all excited and here talking about it today. There have been quite a few questions around a second webinar. We realize that it's impossible to accommodate all the times of the globe. So yes, we are hoping to hold a second webinar, and the timing will be pretty different to try to accommodate people who weren't able to make this due to it being the middle of the night. The key date here is the application deadline. This is June 17th, US, June 17th. And we encourage you to apply early, start the application process early. We've made it rather streamlined and straightforward, but at any point as you're preparing your application, if you have questions, especially administrative questions, please reach out. Never wait till the last minute for that. July 31st is noted as the anticipated date to be notified of either your proposal being successful and accepted or not. However, the caveat there is if there is an exorbitant number of applications, a very large number of applications received, the technical review process can take a little bit longer, but early August at the latest. And then that would then mean this cohort of successful applicants will run for 2 years from this August until August 2027. And it will be a cohort-based program. And what this means is you will be part of a group that is very interactive, supporting each other, and absolutely being able to network and interact with the Global Fishing Watch research and innovation team members who are here today and some others as well. So there will be a big kickoff for the group to welcome everybody and introduce you to more of the team members. I will be hosting various office hours for you to ask questions and engage along the way with various members of the team participating. Global Fishing Watch uses essentially a forum, if you will, called Slack. And there's different channels on Slack. And so there will be a specific channel created for the grantees in this program that you'll have access to at all times. And it's a great way to interact with one another and with Global Fishing Watch. There will be a formal onboarding, guidance throughout, and of course, a lot of support around the products and data sets specifically that David will go into in a little bit. There will be opportunities for you to be sharing progress with Global Fishing Watch along the way. And to that extent, our comms team with Lisa will also have the opportunity to spread the word about the great work that you all are doing with Global Fishing Watch. 2 reports required, just 2. 1 midterm report, we're calling that the interim report, and 1 final report. And that goes for both a programmatic report and a financial report. Very general, not too rigorous. All right, the notice of funding opportunity is your best friend for the application process. It is your guiding document in absolutely all regards. So always check the NOFO first to see if your question is already within there. We've tried to keep it rather comprehensive. There's the big description of the funding opportunity, the generalized and the more detailed one. I received a few questions about impact areas. Ideally, yes, for your project to be a good fit, it should align with one, at least, impact area that's outlined in the NOFO. And you can read up on these in more detail online. No, you absolutely do not need to hit every impact area or even more than one. Eligibility information, I've already gone over that in a little bit more detail. There's the detailed instructions for how to submit your application. It is a link that is embedded within the NOFO, and it's essentially a Google Doc that allows you to upload all of your required documents directly there. The instructions are there written, but if you have any questions about that process, of course, reach out to me at any time. The last point that's really critical is the evaluation criteria. And why this is critical is because this is essentially what the technical reviewers who are reviewing all of the proposals will be using as the scoring rubric for your application. So look and read and really get to know the evaluation criteria. This is a great way to strengthen your proposal and make it more competitive. If you're curious about how the applications will be reviewed, the technical review process, that is also outlined within the NOFO. I'll hand it over to David in just a moment, but inside the NOFO, Section 1C goes through the Global Fishing Watch data sets and platforms. So yes, it is a requirement to be using at least one Global Fishing Watch data set in your project. Essentially, the research project should clearly state how the data set is going to be used, applied, etc. within the project. And there is a whole document that is linked within the NOFO that goes into this in more detail. And David will give you a bit more details about it now as well.
Great. Thanks, Kara. Is that Kara, can you do something? Can you hit escape and then represent, just because there's a slight edit in the slides and you gotta do that. Great. So we're doing, so hopefully you have read the PDF that was shared with this thing. It should be public. Should I present it, Kara?
No, I'm resharing.
Oh, okay. Okay, great. Sorry.
To
So
your
I'll just talk.
slide.
Yeah. No,
Right
sounds
back.
great. So we have done, we have made a ton of data sets public on our website, which I encourage this group to be looking at and try to understand. And we've described those in that PDF. That PDF is one of the most important things for you to look at. But we're also doing something unusual here as well, which is making new data sets available that are not yet public to this group. And so there's as you could tell from this document, some are not, they're not fully baked, but they are useful now. And so to use it, I highly encourage you to ask us questions about how you hope to be able to use it and how you think it can be applied. And let me walk through just some of these data sets. And Kara, how much time do I have again? What's the time check here? Just so I don't talk for 3 hours.
You're good for 15 minutes.
15 minutes. Okay, great. Okay, so let's look at this. And so the high level here is that we are Global Fishing Watch. We have historically been focused on fishing, but we're interested in all possible applications of our data. And through what we're calling the Open Ocean Project, we're expanding to monitoring all human activity at sea, which includes not just fishing, but also things like aquaculture, shipping, offshore wind, sand dredging, offshore oil, and so forth. So we welcome proposals on all possible applications. Next slide, please. The core data set we have is the automatic identification system, which is called AIS, and are vessels that broadcast their GPS positions so that other boats can see where they are to avoid collisions. What you're looking at here is a map of about 500,000 boats which have AIS and their positions over one entire year. This includes about 400,000 non-fishing boats and about 100,000 fishing boats. You can see in this the shipping lanes as well as all of the fishing patterns. And this is a presence of vessel data which is available for your use, and it is described in that data set. Now, the one we have worked the most with the Global Fishing Watch is, of course, fishing. Next slide, please. And this is our fishing effort data, which we now have data from 2012 to 2024. This is where we see boats engaged in apparent fishing activity, which is essentially searching for fish or placing gear in the water whenever they're not transiting and having activity. And we have a detailed database about each of these boats in the water. And there's also, of course, again, we also have a detailed database about all the non-fishing boats as well. With regards to fishing, next slide. We described a few different data sets we have available for specific fishing boats. One is a data set on long lines. And so you can imagine our general model just says where boats are moving as if they are fishing. Long line model guesses where they are specifically setting their lines, and you can say when they're doing that. And it's a very detailed data set. We can make more recent data for this up. There's a public version. We can make more recent data for this available if you want, potentially. Next slide. And we have a data set that's not yet public, but the data is actually available upon request, which is specific to bottom trawling, and it's a much more accurate estimate of where bottom trawlers are scraping the bottom as opposed to engaging in midwater trawling or other types of fishing. Next slide. The new data sets that we've been working on the last few years, and building on AIS, is drawing from imagery. And the whole idea of the Open Ocean Project is essentially to combine the AIS data with imagery to describe the footprint of human activity in the ocean. And this shows most of, does the bottom trawling data set have global coverage? The answer is it has AIS coverage. So everything that is AIS, it has estimates for, which is a very small percentage in Southeast and South Asia of the total bottom trawlers, and a very large percentage in places like Europe. We're working to complement that with imagery. So imagery here, this is where the imagery we're working with mostly images the coastal waters, but that's good because that's where almost all of human activity is concentrated close to shore, and things that are far from shore generally have AIS devices. So next slide, just to give you a conceptual view of what this is like, The synthetic aperture radar, the radar data set, which is already public, you can imagine these satellites are flying north-south and they take an image like this. And every day they take an image along one swath. And here you're looking at 3 different days. You have a few different swaths of images. And so you're basically getting lots and lots of snapshots of what's on the water. It's not tracking, it's individual. At this time, I took a picture and I saw these boats. And with that, we're able to see all the offshore infrastructure as well as all of the large fishing boats. For instance, next slide, we built out the first global map of all offshore oil and wind structures, which we are now updating monthly. And next slide, you can also detect all of, this is a map of one of the busiest places in the ocean, the North Sea. You can see from this, we can see all the fishing boats, which are in purple, the offshore oil and wind, which are turquoise and yellow, and then the non-fishing boats, a little hard to see here, which are white. And so that's what Sentinel-2 allows us to see in those coastal waters. You look across enough time, you can get a picture of the activity. Next slide. That's already public. What we're making available later this month, later in June, end of June or early July, and then also encouraging use for this study is detections of boats through Sentinel-2. Sentinel-2 is optical imagery, so it's much more intuitive. This is what it looks like. And we have now processed 7 years of global Sentinel-2 data to detect boats on the water. You can see, we can detect how big the boat is, and we can also tell if it's moving and the direction of travel and about how fast it's going because of the wake it produces and some other characteristics of the imagery. That's very powerful because you can now say, you know, or thinking about using this, for instance, to estimate greenhouse gas emissions, because you can see how fast the boat is going and how big it is. And also we have, for every single one of these detections across 7 years, of which we have 100 million detections of boats, we have stored a thumbnail. Next slide. And in the example document, you saw examples of this. You know, we're now working on that. For this initial year, it may, you know, I encourage you to ask us before you apply about what you may want to do with these thumbnails, because it may or may not be possible. And I think there's a lot of things that we have been working with the data for a while that we think are obvious that are just not obvious at all about what is possible and what is not. So please ask us questions about what you think might be possible to do with this data. For instance, right now we're trying to build models to identify where vessels can have encounters between boats in the imagery, and that involves labeling a lot of these thumbnails. Like we have these thumbnails and we look through the thumbnails and try to find where there's boats having encounters. Next slide. We're also doing the same thing right now to, I guess I didn't show that. I was going to show where there's, you look for other activities as well. We're also trying to identify bottom trawling using just the imagery. And you can estimate fishing, non-fishing. I don't think that will be available right away, but it can be. To estimate fishing activity using the Sentinel-2 in exactly the same way we did with Sentinel-1, which is you have a thumbnail of a boat, you look at where it is in the water, and you give a probabilistic estimate of whether it's a fishing boat or not. We have done this internally, and we can make a map of fishing activity from Sentinel-2. Next slide. And just to give you a sense of what this is like of AIS versus AIS, which is the GPS coordinates, versus the Sentinel-2 data. For instance, here's a map of all fishing activity from AIS data in Asia across the 2012 to 2024, 13 years of data. And from this, of course, it looks like the Bay of Bengal up there near Bangladesh. It's a large marine protected area. It looks like there's no fishing. If you go to the next slide, this is the data set from Sentinel-2, and you can see there it's a much more continuous activity along the coastline. Of course, you also see that Sentinel-2 does not see the high seas. However, as I said before, most of those boats have AIS, although it varies by region. And so what this allows us to do is get a much more continuous estimate of that fishing intensity close to shore. This data set on average sees about 3 times as many vessels as Sentinel-1 because it can see smaller boats. In fact, we see about over half of the 10-meter boats if they're moving faster than 2 knots. The caveat is it has to be sunny. And so we also have to tell you how often it's sunny in that exact location. And so there's some tricky things about actually doing the math to estimate activity. Again, please ask us questions. Next slide. I'm not sure we included this one in the data set description, but we also have 25 historic scenes from RadarSat 2, which is a synthetic, or it's like Sentinel-1, it's synthetic aperture radar, but it's also collected unevenly. It's a private satellite, and it's collected a lot of places over the open ocean, so you can kind of get some places that were not in Sentinel, not in Sentinel-1, and are also not in Sentinel-2 because they're farther from shore. But again, you can ask about the region. And then the new thing that we're working on now, that again, next slide, where we're getting detections of boats around the world right now, building them up in our database, is from Planet imagery. Now, Planet has a much higher resolution than Sentinel-2. Now, remember I said you could see about half of the boats that are 10 meters if they're moving. With Sentinel-2, we can with Planet, where each pixel is 3 meters, we can essentially, on a sunny day, see every boat that's moving regardless of size, and about half of the stationary 10-meter boats. This is a picture of all those little dots there are stationary recreational fishing boats, and the moving ones, of course, are moving. This is an image off the coast of Florida during a recreational fishing season that opens, and hundreds of boats go out to fish lobster, and all those little white dots are boats. Next slide. We are collecting at least one cloud-free image per week of everywhere that is highlighted here in yellow using Planet imagery. And we have these detections internally, and we'll be doing analyses on these later this year. If this is a data set you're interested in working with, please let us know what your idea is, and we can think about the feasibility of getting that to you. All right, next slide. Another data set we have internally that we've developed is that we have imaged all of these. We have taken higher resolution, 1 meter resolution. So remember, the Planet stuff is 3 meters, 1 meter. That means each pixel is 1 meter by 1 meter. Images of most of the ports in the world. Every's a little, most of them. And we've applied an algorithm that detect boats in it. Next slide. And we have a database of the number of boats that have been detected in these ports, and and match them up to AIS so we can tell which of these are broadcasting, which are not, and how big they are. We have a thumbnail of each, and we haven't done anything more with that. So we have that data set sitting there to do analysis on, and are essentially waiting for research projects to apply it to. Next slide. And we've imaged about, these are all the little dots here show the number of ports we've imaged. We counted over 600,000 boats at port. That's just some of the examples of our data sets. Andrea, Rocio, Tyler, is there anything you'd want to add on that? I was just kind of, the main, as I was saying here, the main refrain here is ask us about how you want to apply the data set. And to think broadly about not only things that are currently available, but what might be available. Obviously, the things that are available are really great because you can go download them and start playing with them now. And I think a strong proposal would kind of show that you understand how that data works and how to apply it to existing questions. But we're also really excited about this expanded use as well.
I might just mention there was a question about the kind of coverage of the AIS data, and someone saying that they heard the data prior to 16 was different than after 2016. And one of the data sets and one of the keys to working with AIS is that the coverage and the reception of AIS vessels with AIS has improved over time. So more boats are using AIS, more satellites are able to record AIS messages over time, and that has a effect on the data and the time series. And we are working to, one of the data sets that we can make available is this data set of AIS reception or some measure of how much AIS data is actually observed in areas over time. And so part of the idea is that could allow better better consideration of time series effects when looking at the data set. So just wanted to mention, but it is our data is kind of a continuous data set from 2012 to current. There are just kind of increases in the coverage and the reception in that time frame.
Yeah, doing time series analysis with any of these data sets is very tricky because the changing coverage in AIS. We're working on a white paper right now about how AIS has increased about tenfold since, or public vessel tracking has increased about tenfold since 2012, when there was, maybe 10K vessels that you could track regularly, and now it's over 100,000. Even though the total amount of fishing has not increased in the world.
We have several questions about the data sets in the questions, and our team will try to solve them one by one during this webinar, but in case they are not answered, we will just put them together in a document and try to group them into topics to have the most comprehensive set of questions that we can. And I would also add that we have a couple of platforms, and we have the R package and the Python package. And during the cohort activities, we will do some onboarding to this, so to the availability of data via these different platforms. David, Kara, if you want to go to the following slides, I'm gonna change a little bit of gears, and if there's yes, and start to address some of the questions that we have received recently. Some of us have written to us asking questions about the eligibility, about some aspects of the program, and one of the questions that we get most is about the language itself and the fact that it's going to be in English. So we acknowledge, of course, that English is right now the common way of communication between lots of us in research, even if we're not native English speakers. Several people at Global Fishing Watch are not native English speakers. I am not a native English speaker. I am from Colombia, and I studied in Brazil, so I use English in research, and this is the case for many of us. And Global Fishing Watch team is international. I would be able to give some support in other languages, but to be fair, we cannot give support to all of the languages. So that's why we're gonna keep to English, to stick to English. And this shouldn't be interpreted, please, as a barrier for applying. The proposals won't be scored based on if they are written in like very nice English, very fluent English, and believe us, some native English speakers also write in several ways. So how you write shouldn't be a problem to apply, please. If you are understanding this call, if you have a previous experience with conversations and understanding this, and if you read papers and write papers, we understand this should be enough to participate in the cohort. And as I said, some of the supports one-on-one, if we have calls, we can switch to Spanish, we can switch to Portuguese or French, but not to all of these languages. So this is like basically how we are going to be communicating. And it's the standard language for science and research, so we hope this is something that we can work in. Another of the questions that we've got is about the priority geographies. And as Kara mentioned and David mentioned, one of the objectives of this program is to expand the reach and the diversity of our research network. And Global Fishing Watch has already a team that engages in countries around the world. And in these countries, we can have a better notion of the country's context and the country's administrative and academia, the organization. And it's a better place. There are countries where it's better to start because we can provide better support and better alignment. So instead of just amplifying to every country in the world, we decided to give priority to these countries where we have some kind of capacity, possibility, and some previous engagement. So that's the spirit of the Tier 1 countries. It's being able to better support and to better contextualize the proposals. And regarding the second tier of countries, these are basically middle and low incomes and low income countries around the world. So you may notice that your country is out of this list, the Tier 1 and 2 list. This is not a signal to avoid from applying. We welcome countries, proposals from all around the world. We do have a restriction, and there is a question in the question and answers section. We do have a restriction. It's a restriction by law. The US has a list of countries with whom if we are a US-based organization, we cannot grant grants with some countries. And this would have to go via a legal review because not every case is clear and straightforward to say right now, like, yes, no, this is not a definite answer, but some of the countries that are in the sanctions list from the US are going to be definitely at least delayed in the evaluation, and this is beyond our will. This is something that we cannot control. So you may have more questions about the countries in the questions and answer, but this is what we wanted to tell you. Like the spirit of the Tier 1 countries, the spirit of the Tier 2. We want to expand the network, but without centering only in countries that have high income. So this is why the Tier 2 list of countries was put up to have a notion of other countries that we would really like to have a presence in. Next slide. And about the common fund, we mentioned a common fund in the NOFO, and we mentioned a budget in the NOFO. So first of all, your budget should have everything that is necessary for you to execute successfully your project. And if you have other funds, because $10,000 or $20,000 are not enough, then we really encourage you to add this to the supplementary information, so you can tell us which is the other funds that we have. And this common fund would be only destined for outreach and publications of products after the execution of the proposals issued from these proposals. The reason why we did this is because publication charges can take a fair amount of this budget. So, and not necessarily all of the proposals will end up either in publication, or like maybe it's not the outreach goal of the proposal. So adding publication charges or adding this kind of rubric to the budgets will eat a part of the budget, will use a part of this budget beforehand, before we understand a bit what's going to be the fate of the proposal. So it's a separate fund. It's for outreach and communication in the end. And proposals about the use of this common fund will be granted one-on-one during the work plans for selected proposals. So please don't the publication or conference attendance in the budgets, but don't assume, don't add in the common fund anything that is really necessary to execute the project. Next. Oh, this is a question about, was a comment about the budget. So you can continue, please. And I will defer to you, Cara.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone. That was very interactive. There's still a lot coming in, I see in the Q&A in the chat, so that's great. We do have about 15, 17, 18 or so minutes for general questions, not project specific, but general questions. And just for your convenience on this final slide, we have put the active links that we consider the most key for the program. So the first one is the overall grant landing page. All of the key dates are listed on there. The link to the notice of the funding opportunity is also on that grant landing page, but we have embedded it here for your convenience. The link that lives within the notice of funding opportunity to the datasets document is also linked here for your convenience. And thank you so very much for coming and being so engaged and for your interest in this program. We do invite a large pool of applicants to come, so you do not need to be in a priority country. All of the eligible countries are listed within the notice of funding opportunity. You do not need to be in one of the priority countries to apply. We encourage a wide range of applicants from all over the world to apply. So with that, I will stop sharing my screen. Thank you so much, everyone. We hope you have a wonderful rest of your day or your evening, depending on where you are. And we look forward to reading your proposals. Aloha, take care.